Welcome back. We're here with Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Massachusetts needs money, of course, to replace those Cape Cod bridges as well. And you did celebrate at the Sagamore Bridge when the money came through from President Biden's Infrastructure Act. But is that money guaranteed now with an incoming Trump administration?
Well, let's start with any other administration on God's green earth, of course it would be guaranteed. It's already been allocated and so on. What we are working feverishly to do is literally to lock the doors and windows so there is no way to pull that money back.
To cut the check.
Yeah, so that's what we're looking for.
Well, that's the question. When will that check be cut?
Well, like anything, when you're talking about a couple of $1 billion, it actually comes in different pieces. Remember, the funding came in different pieces. Remember how we got $25 million at the beginning, and then we got $650 million, and then we got other pieces. So that means they're all on slightly different tracks. There is no, I love the metaphor of cut the check, but there is no single. So we have locked some of the pieces down and working very hard. And I want to give a shout out to Governor Healy. Her team has been just terrific in what things do we need to do in order to make sure that we've dotted every I, crossed every T.
And just quickly, the Bourne Bridge. Where's funding for that?
That's going to be new funding.
Okay.
And that's going to be harder right now.
In a blue state.
Yep. You know, I just want to say, though, the irony here that we're talking about states. In the 4 years that Joe Biden was president and the 8 years that Barack Obama was president, a lot more money actually went to red states on things like infrastructure, healthcare, because the need was greater. And the idea that what will happen in a Trump administration is just strike back simply because we are a blue state, I think it really tells us about a level of corruption. It's another form of corruption. It's about a political corruption that infects this administration, and it troubles me deeply.
I have to ask you about President Biden's pardon of his son, Hunter. It's drawn a lot of attention and scrutiny. President Biden has warned about Donald Trump politicizing the justice system. Did President Biden just do the same thing?
Look, I think wrong is wrong, and I think it was the wrong thing for him to do in this case. People should be treated the same whether they're presidents, former presidents, family members of presidents. But if we're going to talk about pardons, can I just do one quick one? Pardons are supposed to be about justice, and I want to give a shout out to Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who's leading the charge, asking Biden, look, if you're going to do pardons, do one for these low-level marijuana offenses that are still on people's records and that mean that people can't get jobs because they've got a conviction for things that today wouldn't even be a violation of the law.
She's been very vocal on that.
She really has.
There is talk now of the White House of issuing blanket pardons. So to individuals or groups of people who potentially could become targets to protect them. What do you think of that? Do you think that's a good idea?
So I do think the pardons on marijuana are a good one. I think what you're probably talking about is what Senator Markey has proposed.
That's right. That's correct. Yeah.
This anticipating what's happening. And I want to say, in an ordinary world, under ordinary circumstances, no, that's not an approach that makes sense. Certainly legal, certainly something the president has the power to do. But we don't live in that world. And when Donald Trump has openly said that he intends to use the FBI, the Justice Department, to attack his political enemies who were just doing their jobs in the Justice Department and trying to enforce the law, that's a time when blanket pardons should be on the table.
So you think it's not such a bad idea then?
I think that under these circumstances, we can't say to people who were called on to take on hard jobs and who did them not for political reasons, they did them, this was their job at the Justice Department, that now they've got to defend themselves, they've got to hire lawyers, they've got to be out there in court and do this.
It can bankrupt people. That's
right, it can bankrupt people, exactly right. And the blanket pardon just takes that off the table, this kind of political retribution.
Thanks again to Senator Warren.
Thanks
we could talk much longer. We're out of time, though. Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
The Sunday Roundtable is next. A city councilor under arrest. The bad look for Boston when the FBI rolls up before the sun comes up. Stay with us.